podcast. I'm here with Brenden and we're with Reece McInerney from Body Beyond. How are you going, Reece?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Good, thank you. I wanted you to jump on. We've been meaning to have you for a long time, and so it's really cool to have you on now.
My pleasure.
Reece, so you currently are of bodybuilding stature. You're really into the training, into the regimented approach to your lifestyle. So what we want to know is how that all started. So how did you get from when you were growing up to who Reece is right now?
Pretty much had a very normal childhood. I'd like to say normal, like as good as any childhood can be. You know what I mean? Started off playing soccer, very normal family life, you know, like family dinners, that sort of stuff. Never really liked soccer, I think because of the whole team aspect of it.
Yeah.
Had a few shitty teams and kind of fell out of love with that. But yeah, then one of my neighbours was actually a really good swimmer at the time, and my parents put me into that. Been kind of moving from sport to sport from about pretty much as soon as I could walk through till about maybe 11, and moved through a few sports, and then finally found my home in swimming. I remember doing like my first swimming carnival when I was probably like 8 years old, I'd say, and managed to go to district and regional for pretty much everything besides backstroke.
Yeah, wow.
But then after that,
all the forward strokes.
Hey?
All the forward strokes.
Yeah, all forward strokes, definitely. Then pretty much I moved from swimming, so I swam from the age of 11 through to about 18. And then moved into bodybuilding, and honestly haven't looked back since. Yeah,
we've been us being mates for a long time. Like I've definitely seen the changes, not the swimming to bodybuilding changes, because we met after you got into your bodybuilding journey, but at the same time, like from the stories that you've told me and the conversations that we've had, like the changes have been significant. And so my next question is then, what did you take away from swimming, like the disciplines and the lessons and the values that you now apply into bodybuilding?
That you really need to be in it for like your own self-enjoyment, because there's very little money in swimming. Now there's not even enough money in swimming for you to make a full-time income for most people. The other people that are making the money are the people that are winning the Olympic Games. So for me, I kind of realised that, hey, if I'm going to do something, I probably should be doing it for the right reasons rather than for fame or notoriety. I always had an obsession with like being muscular and, you know, trying to push limits, and I honestly believe bodybuilding is one of the hardest sports in the world, so kind of naturally gravitated towards that.
Yeah, it's one of those selfish sports. Like there's a lot of focus required and there's a lot of commitment required, and there are 99% of those people around, like they say they understand, but they have no idea, because like you're doing your thing and then they're living their lives like completely outside of your thing, but also at the same time, like when they try to involve themselves with your life, and then your mentality and the way that you approach things is so different that the first thing that they do is that they attack. They go, oh, you're so inconsiderate, or you're so selfish, and things like that. Can you just walk us through the mentality that you go through, and then what you see outside of the bodybuilding space and the mentality there, and just share the contrast so that people have more of an idea what bodybuilding looks like?
I think in terms of like people accepting it, or not necessarily accepting it, but just understanding perhaps, I feel like for me it's more, I used to be very like a bit worse for this than I am now. So like say for example, like I wouldn't go to a family event and just eat what they're having. I would take like my own meal prep container. And honestly, unless you're prepping for Olympia, I think that's a bit of a dick move, to be honest. Like I think you should be able to go to family events. Like, you know, you don't have to drink, you don't have to eat ice cream and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think, you know, how hard is it to order a steak at a family event, you know, as opposed to having your 200 grams of chicken and rice. Like you can very easily manipulate macros and that sort of stuff too. Like, you know, maybe if you're 2 weeks out from a show, perhaps take your own meal prep food. In terms of that mentality, I feel like bodybuilders look at food as protein, carbs and fats, whereas most normal people look at food as, oh, this will taste nice, oh, this will be enjoyable to eat. So I think that's the main contrasting difference between bodybuilders and like Gen Pop is like we don't really look to food for enjoyment. We look for it. We look to it for sustenance and like what performance outcome is this going to give us.
Yeah, feel your body.
Yeah. Like I'm never going to go for breakfast and order just pancakes. So I'm like, well, fuck, there's no protein in that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm always going to be like, alright, sweet, I'll get maybe 5 or 6 eggs. I'll usually have a protein shake before I go, and then I'll get maybe some toast or like a croissant or something, which is still obviously not great. Like I'd count that as a cheat meal, or an off-plan meal is probably a better way to put it. But I really don't think it needs to be as scrutinising as what it is and as like strict as what it is for most people that bodybuild.
Yeah.
I use that because most people call themselves bodybuilders, but they don't compete or really do anything with it. So I think that's the main difference, and that's the way bodybuilders look at food, and the general population looks at us as well.
So when you started in competitive bodybuilding, we'll call it competitive bodybuilding, so there would have been a different side to you. So you talk about how you don't really need to scrutinise unless you're really competing at an elite level.
Yeah.
So to me it feels as though that comes from a place of experiencing that yourself, where you would have been heavily scrutinising yourself on taking certain meals to events and doing other different things. And so what journey did you go through to arrive at that conclusion?
I'm naturally an introvert anyway, so I don't really have an issue being the outcast or being the odd one out at any sort of table. Doesn't bother me at all. Especially now, in like the last 5-6 years, gaining the confidence to be who I am. You don't really care as much what people think. You're just happy to do what you're doing. But irrelevant of that, I think what happened with me was I kind of realised like, hey, am I going to gain that much of a performance outcome by taking this Tupperware container and having the 20,000 conversations I'm going to have at the dinner table explaining this? Maybe disrespecting whoever's cooking the meal as well. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're going to like a family event or you're going to like an in-law's house or something like that, it's a bit rude. Do you know what I mean? So like I think unless you're competing at that top tier, I feel like it's not really worth that one meal. Do you know what I mean? Like is it really worth it? Not really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and honestly, most people are happy to cook and cater to you. Do you know what I mean? Like most people aren't going to be like, oh, no, you can't bring anything, or no, this is what we're serving, this is what we're having. Like, most people are pretty generous and pretty understanding. They're going to be like, hey, look, you can't eat pasta, so what we'll do is we'll cook a steak for you or something instead. Yeah. Like, it's very, very easy. So, pretty much what kind of led me to that was I was like, I'm not really gaining any benefit from having these conversations, these difficult, awkward conversations with people over one meal. I'm not gaining any performance benefit. If I was gaining performance benefit, 100%, I'd be going there with my Tupperware containers, I'd be taking my kitchen scales, everything else. One meal in the grand scheme of things over 10 weeks does not make a difference. Yeah. At all.
And with that as well comes discernment. So you're going to have, well, from what I've seen and experienced, like you said, there are people that call themselves bodybuilders, and then there are actual bodybuilders. And so if there is a person who just calls themselves a bodybuilder, and then in their mind they go on, hey, I actually want to really be one, but I'm not really sure like what that approach or what that mentality looks like. How do you discern like the level of competence that's needed to get to that level, to that next step?
So, like, how do I determine if someone is competent enough to become a bodybuilder? Is that what you're saying?
That, but also at the same time, like building the required mentality where they're at that tipping point and they're sort of reluctant to go, hey, I'm willing to just commit everything to me and be the bodybuilder that I say that I am. And what are some discerning values and factors that people would need to consider when they're taking that leap into bodybuilding?
I think first and foremost, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to enjoy the journey. You can't just enjoy the outcome. You can't just be like, oh, I look like a bodybuilder. That's all well and good. Like, everyone would want to be the size of, Ronnie Coleman, right? People can sit here and deny that. All they want, everyone wants to be muscular. It's like what's hardwired into us as men. Do you know what I mean? Like, we want to be tall, we want to be masculine, we want to be muscular, we want to be protective, assertive, all those sort of things, right? And honestly, I think like stature and physical stature are like what is going to govern the majority of that. So everyone, if given the choice, would be more muscular and leaner, right? So you need to enjoy the journey. You need to enjoy eating the foods. Like, you need to honestly enjoy eating meat and rice 6 times a day. You need to enjoy the training. You need to enjoy, maybe even put like perhaps the progression. So I honestly enjoy progressing in the gym. Like, not just put on half a kilo or a kilo here and there. For me, I honestly do enjoy like going into the gym and slightly increasing reps or slightly increasing weight every week or every 2 weeks. That's a massive thing for me. Yeah. I think for the average person, they need to really see it as, I enjoy this lifestyle, and not see it as any sort of chore. Yeah. Like, if you're seeing it as a chore, it's only a matter of time before you fall off or something else becomes more important than that. And as soon as that happens, all your work over the last X amount of time is a waste of time. So, yeah.
What are some bodybuilding fundamentals that, if a person that is just getting started on their bodybuilding journey, what would be some fundamentals that you would ascribe to them so that then they can get to their best?
As simplistic as I can keep it, honestly, a high protein intake, either a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus, depending if you're trying to cut body weight or increase body weight, and training in some sort of progressive overload fashion, and honestly something that's sustainable. That's as simple as I can put it.
That's as simple as it needs to be honest.
Honestly, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And the thing is, we tend to overcomplicate things because, well, depending on our temperament and human nature itself, where we just like to seek things, and sometimes what tends to happen is we just keep on seeking and never actually do anything. And so for people that sit on the fence and just do all the seeking and no doing, like, what would you say to them to then change the way that they think about doing?
I'm going to say it in a pretty abrasive way, but would you rather be Cristiano Ronaldo or would you rather be a spectator? Simple as that. And the only way you're going to find out is, by getting on the field and having a go and, increasing those skills and getting better. That's the only way.
Yeah, and I think as well, the man in the arena, the one that's criticised, is the one that often makes the difference, because they're the one doing the work, failing, learning, growing, and then the spectator's just there on the side and just criticising. And then oftentimes, because they're pointing the finger at the other person or the man in the arena, oftentimes they forget that they're also a part of the arena. Maybe they're not playing in it, but they're sitting in it. And so 100%. sometimes there's just got to be players and there's got to be spectators. Like, that's just nature. But at the same time, like, if you want to be a player or you want to be a man in the arena and not just a spectator, you just do as you said. Like, you find out, you go do it. Yeah. And so, with that being said, what inspired you to get into bodybuilding in the first place?
Think about that. I think throughout my childhood I was always obsessed with like the Hulk. I was always obsessed with superheroes, that sort of thing. Like, saw my dad going to the gym and gaining muscle size and getting stronger in the gym, and I looked up to him, right? So I think for me that was a really big thing, really pivotal moment for me. Like, I was like, all right, sweet. Like, I'm seeing that, bigger guys are getting respect, whether it's in a fictional setting or a non-fictional setting, do you know what I mean? Like, it's cool. And for me, I've always wanted to look like that. So it started off like reasons of vanity, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And then once I developed as a man, like before I started bodybuilding, those were the reasons why. I was like, I wouldn't mind doing that. I want to weight train, all that sort of stuff, but you can't really weight train when you're like 6, 7, 11 years old, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, then as soon as I actually started to develop, go through puberty, go through high school, all the bullshit that comes with that as well, I needed some sort of outlet, and honestly, swimming wasn't cutting it anymore. Yeah. And I used to be really angry when I was a kid for some reason. Don't know why. Didn't have a reason to be, which is probably more concerning. But I was always very aggressive and very angry as a kid. And then I kind of was muzzled, I think, by school and everything else, and I became a bit of a nerd, to be honest. Just didn't say anything to anyone, didn't speak my mind, was never confrontational or anything like that, never assertive. Up until about maybe year 11 or 12, then it started to come back. Yeah. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And swimming wasn't cutting it anymore. I needed some sort of stress release and some sort of outlet to put all of that emotion and all of that frustration into, and like just frustration through life, you know what I mean? So I feel like for me that was kind of what happened there.
And so you mentioned that you were sort of a nerd. So let's dig a little deeper there. So what were you doing in that period of time that you would have been labelled per se as a nerd? Like, what were your other vested interests before that?
Swimming, which is another isolating sport, but it's, I hate to say it, sorry, but it's not very masculine. Mm-hmm. It is hard, 100% not denying it's not hard, but I mean, well, fuck, you are up in a G-string on the stage bodybuilding, so there's also that side of things. But yeah, I don't know. With swimming, it was very, very different. I think it's something you can do. It's a childhood sport. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that a lot of people do as adults. Whereas I feel like the gym, even general population, they're all doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's for health reasons or performance outcomes or some sort of sport-related reason, right? It's always everyone's training.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing CrossFit or some sort of martial arts training or gym now. Feels like, right?
Yeah.
So for me, honestly, the things I was doing, I was playing a lot of video games. Still love video games nowadays. But I just didn't really spend any time socially, to be honest. Like I just didn't have... I had friends, but my friends were just talking to them online, playing PlayStation and that sort of thing. Yeah. Just didn't really have anything else going on besides school. And then obviously started working at 14, 15 and same thing, all those boys were playing PlayStation, so when I had any free time, I was playing PlayStation.
Yeah. I remember playing consoles as well. Like I had the whole list, like PS1, PS2. I had an old Nintendo 64 ones as well.
Yeah, I never had one.
PS3. Then we switched to Xbox. My teenage years, we had a lot of, and because there were 3 boys in the family as well.
You all played together.
We all played together, and because we also had competitive games where you'd play one-on-one, whether it was combat or whether it was sports, there was always a lot of yelling. So controllers thrown, controllers broken,
100%.
Absolutely diabolical. And the thing is, every single week without fail, mum and dad would just walk in and go, if that happens again, I'm just throwing it out.
Sounds familiar.
That sounds very familiar.
I feel like parents don't really understand that, do they? I feel like my dad was pretty good for that too, though, because he did play as well. So he understood getting frustrated, but he would never throw a controller or anything like that. Yeah. I think he could kind of disassociate and kind of realise, look, this is a fucking game. It's not a real life situation. There's no reason to get angry. But as a kid, obviously, you don't really have that emotional control. You just go, I lost. Bang, throw the controller. Right? My brother beat me.
Bang. We were competitive about it. Used to play Need for Speed, a few games like that, mainly car racing ones that I was into as a kid, but in rugby league and all that sort of one.
That's a lot.
As a kid, what you do.
And then at the same time, you don't realise how fast emotions can build as well. In those sorts of ways.
It's like a 5-10 minute game, and by the time you've gotten smashed the whole 5 minutes, or you lose closely, it's pretty aggravating for sure.
Yeah, and at the same time, because as well, you're contained, because you're watching a box, and then you're playing with a console, so there aren't very many parameters where you get to do anything more than just watch the box and use the console, and then it's not going your way, and you're like, bang, the container just explodes.
Not just that, but as a kid, hell, even as an adult, right? How many times is it kind of rubbed in your face that another man or another person is physically beating you? Well, not physically beating you, but actually beating you in something. It's not really rubbed in your face, unless you're stepping in a ring or doing some sort of competitive, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, footy, whatever it is, right? It's not often rubbed in your face, but when you lose a game and it goes, you lose, and then it's actually your brother that's just beaten you, or your sister, or whatever else, right? It's confronting for kids because they don't come into contact that very often. Maybe twice a year, 3 times a year, cross country, little athletics, and swimming.
Yeah.
The 3 carnivals a year, that's it, right?
Yeah, and at the same time, I feel as though too that is also a really good example of social media and what people present to you, and especially if you're very prideful and you're not willing to do the work and you're envious of other people's success. If you see that, and then these people that, let's say you knew them at school, or you were acquaintances at work once upon a time, and then they went and did their own side hustle thing that blew up, and then suddenly you're that person that says, oh yeah, I used to work with that guy, yeah, I know that guy, and then you're at that, you're 40 at the bar going, oh yeah, I know that guy, I can say that I know that guy, like, and at the same time, like, it's sort of that same feeling of just them not really rubbing it in your face, but more so that they did the work and you didn't, but you're also there just going, well, I didn't do the work, but I don't care to admit that. And
I feel like, I 100% understand what you're saying there as well, but I feel like we're still at least 5 to 10 years away from that actually being the case. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think the early 20s of a man and the mid 30s of a man is like where success is set up. Like, I personally can't name a single person from my school that's blown up. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't name a single person. I don't know a single person that I've come into interaction with that's blown up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm still maybe 5-10 years away from seeing those people blow up. Hell, I might even be one of them, you know? Like, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's, everyone's on their own grind, everyone's doing their own thing. But yeah, 100% I can see that being the future for a lot of people, like when they're 35, 40 years old going, I used to know that guy, or, I used to know her, whatever, like. And a lot of people are going to have to come to terms with that and really look themselves in the mirror and face the music of, hey, I did fuck all, and now this is what's happening as a result.
Yeah, that's the thing is, to me, that's the accountability mirror that David Goggins likes to call it. And so it's something that I just reflect on all the time, where if I'm training or I'm following a plan, or like I even try to build my business, like it's facing yourself in the mirror and just saying, hey, do you want to be thinking like this? Do you want to be looking like this? Do you want to be acting like this in 10 years time? Like, because if you're the same, then where do those 10 years go? And so it's one of those things that I often reflect on.
What do you guys think about the phrase, how you do one thing is how you do everything?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
I agree with that.
I agree with it. It's very practical, but also at the same time, like there's some impracticality about it, because certain things require certain temperaments, certain actions, and there are going to be differences. So it's not going to be exactly the same. I think that phrase more has to do with your attitude towards it. So if you're going to be 100% committed all in one thing, it's how it's presented in all of the things. If you half-ass it in one thing, you're likely going to half-ass it in everything. Yeah. So the thing is, how you do everything is how you do anything is how you do everything. To me, is more of an attitude thing, more so than an actual practical use thing per se. So, but at the same time, it's definitely applicable in this sense, because it's important to understand that you're not as in control as you think you are, because you have layers. And so what you see consciously is important, and that's the easiest part to see. It's what you do subconsciously that you don't even think about that plays a deeper role in the actions that you take as well, and the way you think. And so when you reconfigure that and make the unconscious conscious, you are better able and better equipped to make the necessary changes, which then changes the way you do things.
I actually don't like the phrase at all.
Yeah?
Now, the reason why I don't like it, and like I feel like there's a lot of proof in the pudding with this one as well, right? So I'll use a few different people as an example, right? So I'll use myself as an example first, and I'll go into a bit more detail with other people as well. I probably make my bed maybe twice a year, okay? At best, right? Now, not unhygienic at all, like I wash my bed 1 to 2 times a week, right? Wherever it needs to be washed, I wash it, right?
Yeah.
But I'll sit there and I'll meal prep my food every single day. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll go for a haircut every single week. I think it's more so how you do the things you care about is how you do, that's more important than how you do everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'll use Einstein for example, right? Brilliant mind, absolutely just spent his whole life, trying to solve things and trying to understand the world and everything else around him, right?
Yeah.
What did his hair look like?
Why would anyone?
Yeah.
Absolute shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't important to him, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's like you're saying, it's not practical. I totally agree with that. And also, if you're giving 100% to something, right? Again, this isn't healthy. But if you're giving 100% to something, other things are going to fail. Other things are going to deteriorate and fall to shit, right? And to turn to shit. So I feel like, to bring it back to a bodybuilding sort of thing, right? These people that are giving 100% to bodybuilding, like absolutely 100%, like not missing a meal, eating at the same times every day, like all this stuff. Think about all the negatives that are going to come with that as well. Yes, you're going to be a better bodybuilder, right? But honestly, if you don't have the genetics for it, and you're not doing absolutely 100%, it's not worth shit. It's not worth shit. Like, I know hundreds of people that have tried and failed bodybuilding. Hundreds, right? Absolutely hundreds. Everything else will fail. You probably won't be able to have a relationship. That's just how it's going to be. If you're doing actually 100%, like every meal, everything on time, every supplement, like you don't miss a tablet, you're sleeping at the same time every day, you will not be able to go on dates. You're not going to be able to stay over at your girlfriend's house or boyfriend's house, whatever the fuck. You're not going to be able to go to any family event, or many family events, so your family life's going to deteriorate. Probably won't be able to have any pets either, because you're not going to have time for them. You're not going to have any other hobbies, so your mental health is going to deteriorate as well. I think if you're giving 100% to something, yes, the result for that's going to be better, but what's the harm in giving 95%? And then choosing when you give 100%. So maybe the last 12 weeks before a show, giving 100%. I think bodybuilding is this thing that's kind of like looked at as being hardcore and crazy, and all these people are insanely dedicated and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't need to be that way at all. Like, there's a more practical way of doing things. And I saw, like I'm in a David Goggins speech, he was saying that, like, if you're doing something like I'm paraphrasing here, right? If you're doing something 100%, like, it's very, very hard to remain balanced. He said something along the lines of that. And it's true. Like, people aren't going to understand it and that sort of thing. And it's like, I don't think it's healthy for anyone to give 100%. I think that's when a lot of, like, mental health issues are exasperated.
Yeah, that's true.
Made worse. Like, your social life's going to turn to shit, and, whether you admit it or not, like, I'm the biggest introvert out. Everyone needs some sort of human connection. 100%. Unless you're an absolute psychopath. Yeah. You need some sort of human connection. But yeah, that's pretty much. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
I think as well. I was saying this to Brenden, not just in the podcast, but like in conversation before. I don't believe in the concept of balance, because the thing is, balance is one of those things where you're looking for things to be equal, but we all know that things aren't equal, and there are going to be differences in every aspect. So my consideration was more based on proportions and what your proportions towards different commitments look like. So if your commitment is to bodybuilding, your actions are going to be more proportionate to the things that are required in bodybuilding. If your commitment is to improve your relationships, your actions are going to be more proportionate to the relationships and less on bodybuilding. And if you have multiple things that you're committed to, then depending on your priorities and depending on your actions, then things are going to be in a certain proportion, where if you attempt to balance this and make your relationships as equal as the bodybuilding, then you're going to fail at both, because firstly, bodybuilding has different requirements and commitments that are needed than the relationships do.
So it's similar to that phrase, like, jack of all trades, master of none, right?
Yeah, but I think as well though, like, that it's funny you say that, because that's not the complete quote, and I can't remember what the complete quote is, which burns me, right? But at the same time though, what I'm saying is that because there are different requisites for all different things, having a balanced approach, like an equal approach, it doesn't work. It's like treating, it's like the men and women debate. Like, they have differences, and so to treat them equally would just be erroneous. But that's what I mean. And so that aspect of balance, I think it becomes more important by you saying that, by using a different approach where you're making considerations for other different things, especially if you're not that obsessive in nature when it comes to one particular thing, is super important, because like you said, the rest of the things will deteriorate. So if you're 100% committed to bodybuilding, then you're going to do the bodybuilding, and the consequences of that is that you might not have a relationship, or you're not going to go on dates, or you're not going to have time for pets and things like that. But you know that, because that's a conscious choice that you decide to make, where if people are in this naive delusion that they're all going to have it together, and by half-assing everything that they're going to be doing in order to try and make everything work, then they'll have nothing that works.
What I'm trying to get at with that whole putting 100% into bodybuilding, I'm not saying don't do that, right? If you have the pedigree and you have the 100% confidence that you can do that and make it happen, do it. You know, I'll be the first person to help you, right? 100%. What I'm sick of seeing though is these people that have no hope, no genetics, right? Like absolutely right. And it's like you can dictate that straight away by looking at someone, essentially, right? Asking them a few questions, how long have you been training for? What's your nutrition like? All these sort of things, right? If they have everything dialed in already and they look like shit after 3 to 5 years, right? Let's say bodybuilding. What are they going to do after that? Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to stop those people from spending 5 to 10 years, wasting 5 to 10 years of their life. Again, bodybuilding for no reason. That's what I'm trying to stop. Because I see a lot of that, they might have been better off doing something else. Like they're spending so much money on the supplements, the food and everything else. And they might have been better off starting a business, getting into construction, starting a family. Like there's so many better things they could have done in their early 20s, late 20s. And I feel like if it's something you want to do and you want to do it out of passion, you don't need to give 100%. Do you know what I mean? But if this is something you're doing professionally, semi-professionally, whatever it is, right, you're going to have to give 100%. You need to be prepared to make those sacrifices. And a lot of people think they are until the debt has to be paid, and then they're like, oh fuck, this is confronting, this is more than I thought. And then they look, that's not until after. I'm talking to a lot of guys that are like 35, 40 that have like stopped bodybuilding. They're like, I haven't got a pro card, I've never won a show, I look like shit still, there's 20-year-olds that look better than me. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to like get people to do what they should be doing and stay in their own lane.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to make that determination as well, and as soon as possible. Yeah. And I think as well too, and we're all susceptible to this to a degree. I don't think we're absolutely honest with ourselves, and so when we aren't absolutely honest with ourselves and we don't ask ourselves the hard questions or have people around us asking us the hard questions, then often we just get into this delusional state of, oh, I can do this. And then when it comes time to do the work, then, oh my God, this is so overwhelming, but I don't want to tell anyone because then... sorry for cutting you off. When you were playing, I know you were playing football as a kid, right? Yeah. Did you think you were going to be professional? Oh, for sure. I still think that now. I feel like I can still jump in there.
That's what I'm getting at, right? Some people don't grow out of this. It's very, very easy. If you have a logical mind and you have good people that are very skilled and very they've acquired as much knowledge as they need to make an informed decision about whether or not you're going to make it or not. Yeah. I feel like if you have those people around you and they're going, and they're genuinely looking at you and being like, I think you can do this. Other people in our circle think we can do this as well. I think that's going to speak volumes, and that's going to be a lot more authentic, and that's going to be a lot healthier for someone rather than them being like fed bullshit. Yeah. Rather than them believing like a childhood dream. I was the same as you. I thought I was going to be a fucking Olympic swimmer. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? But I was like, hey, I haven't made Open Nationals before. Yeah. I've never medalled at state. What's going to happen? How the fuck am I possibly going to progress that much in 3 to 4 years? Yeah. I'm never going to. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the 5'6" kid thinking he's going to be in the NBA. Yeah. I'm sorry, it's never going to happen.
There's definitely parameters. Because it's funny because I learned, not yesterday, I think it was the day before, with genetics, 2% of human DNA is chromosomal, and a lot of what scientists call junk DNA is actually non-coding DNA, which is mcDNA, and that is then affected by inadequate nutrition and environmental stresses. So the argument could be made that even though that you have the way you look, and there is slight potential by changing the environment and the nutrition and maintaining the nutrition as well as the stress, that does then change the way that the DNA is encoded to then get the genetic potential. And so a lot of different things allow for that to happen, but at the same time, just knowing too that this is not what you're willing to commit to, that's often what it's make or break. It's whether you're willing to decide to commit, because often people use, I didn't have good genetics, but you didn't do the work either.
Yeah.
So like,
we didn't allow enough time for those genetics to come through.
And to come through.
Yeah,
and so,
most people think that, I've been training for 6 months, why don't I look like Ronnie Coleman or why don't I look like Chris Bumstead now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it takes longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
Hell, even him after training for 6 months, he never looked like Chris Bumstead.
I was going to say Ronnie Coleman was training for 10 years before he even got into Olympia?
20 years, yeah.
Yeah. It was
I don't think he won his first Olympia till he was early 30s.
Early 30s, yeah.
Time's one of the determining factors to everything. Like, you can, for example, a cake, people think, say, what's her name? Margaret, whatever her surname is, she makes a Betty Crocker cake, for example. They've got a recipe there, and it's made to make the best cake, right? People think they can be their own chef, and instead of following the recipe, baking the cake for an hour in the oven at 200 degrees, for example, they go and bake the cake try and bake it for 10 minutes at 250 degrees or whatever. The cake's going to be fucking burnt on the outside, and it's going to taste like shit.
Yeah.
The time is what determines, it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, no, I get that. And whether you have perfect ingredients or not, aka genetics, you need to allow time for those genetics to shine through. And a lot of people don't. They're just very impatient. I think now, look, I wouldn't say it's a form of ADHD, but I feel like everyone nowadays in society is very impatient and has the attention span of a 3-year-old. Do you know what I mean? That's why people I know a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of content creators are cutting their content down now to 15, 30 seconds. That's why TikTok's so viral and so really important for businesses nowadays, because you can only hold people's attention for so long. People aren't going to sit here and listen to a podcast or something unless they're driving, or do you know what I mean? Or unless they're invested in what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's shit, but that's just how it is. How many people, do we all know that mindlessly scroll through shit?
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it too. I was guilty of it too. I've deleted Instagram, I've deleted Facebook, deleted Snapchat. I've still got TikTok, but I'll only use it now when I'm on the toilet or when I have free time, which is pretty much when I'm on the toilet. Yeah. I'll scroll through.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things as well where, again, it's decisions and it's values, because often the times when people don't determine the values that they uphold, life often determines it for them, and oftentimes it's going to come in an inconvenient time, and they're not going to like it, and so. Which is why you have those 35 and 40-year-olds that say that their values were bodybuilding, but they still look like the way they do. And now they've come to the realization that it wasn't really their values in the first place. And so, because they were undecided and they said, look, this is what I say my values are, but they didn't stand firm on it and go, I'll do whatever it takes, then they went, well, here I am now, and I look like I suck, and I've wasted 20 years, and what do I do? And so, it's one of those things where if you learn to suck first, and then you give yourself the time, the space, the compassion, the understanding, but the commitment and the obsession, and you make that decision, you don't know where you're going to end up. And so it's one of those things where it's cultivated as well. It's not one of those things where I've heard many people say, oh, he's just gifted, or you know what, he's got the skill, or he's got the energy, or he's just got the know-how. You can develop anything if you're willing to put the work in and learn the necessary things about yourself, so that then you can then change the way that you are.
I'm kind of in that position now. It's funny that you mentioned that, where people say, oh, he's gifted, he's this, he's that. Right? If you saw me, how old am I now, 24? If you saw me 8 years ago, you would see me and you'd be like, how the fuck is this kid ever going to be a bodybuilder? Do you know what I mean?
I have seen photos of you.
That's what
16 and 18.
Right?
Yeah.
I was so skinny, but I was very broad in the shoulders, had a small waist, had small joints. Right, those are favourable traits in bodybuilding. So the foundations were there. I just needed to build the house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If you have shit foundations, you can't just if you have 200 metre square bit of land, right? How are you going to build a 400 square house on it? You physically can't. You need a big land to build a big house, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying with bodybuilding. That's who I'm trying to stop from going too far down the path before they go, I'm out of land. What can I do now? I've destroyed my life. I've ruined my life, right? But I'm in that unique, like back to what I was saying before, I'm in that unique stage now where people don't believe me. They're like, oh, but you've always had good genetics, haven't you? You know, you've always looked this way, you've always been muscular, you've always been tall, whatever. Right? Like, yeah, I've been tall, like, you know, a majority of my life, but not always. And I definitely was never muscular until very recently. So, yeah, like it's kind of disheartening. I wouldn't say disheartening. It's kind of aggravates when people just assume that I've had it easy. And I'm like, you've got no idea how many times I've eaten my meals and thrown them up. Yeah. You've got no idea, you know, how many times I've, you know, damn near ripped things off the bone in the gym because I'm trying to train so hard to like put on muscle. Do you know what I mean? Like it's been doing this for 6 years, bodybuilding, you know, right? Weight training for don't even know how long. But it's ridiculous that people are willing to write certain things off and paint you with the same colour as, oh, you're gifted, oh, this comes easy to you, that's why. And it's honestly just because they're afraid to confront their own shortcomings.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I feel about it. Yeah. Like they're just trying to make themselves feel better for the work they have put in.
Yeah, and you're never going to get criticised by someone who's doing better than you.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was funny, I was saying this today to someone in the gym, I was like, I don't have any issues with any person, to be honest. Like, I don't. Like, I couldn't care less. Like, no one's done anything to me, and if they've said something on my back, I'll probably forget about it, or I don't hear it, so yeah.
Yeah, and fancy saying that, like how disrespectful, like say a guitarist, for example, playing guitar, someone says, oh, you're so talented at on playing the guitar, you know how much work it takes to learn how to do the guitar or do anything. There's a lot of work that it doesn't come, you don't get born and fucking have that the skill. But that discipline, everything, like you need to work on it. It's a skill that you need to develop.
And it's not something
that you get.
You've got no idea at someone's starting point when you're seeing them 6 years down the line. You know what I mean? And that's the shit thing. Like so many people, like, you know, I see it with money all the time, right? Like I know people that are very well off and that have, you know, done, I hate that term, well off, because someone along the line, whether it was them or their grandfather or their great-grandfather or their grandmother, whatever, right, has done the work to get them there. Do you know what I mean? And I hate that term, well off, but I hate myself for using it, but right, it's just like, you know, something that's entrenched in, like, you know, how we describe people, I suppose. But, yeah, like, you know, that's the thing, right? People be like, oh, you know, he's only got money because his mum and dad have money and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, well, his dad's done the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't be, like, you know, putting shit on them for that. Like, fuck you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is, too, the universe responds as well. Like, and that's something I've really taken away over the last few years, is that even just thinking like that, where you think either awfully or worse off for somebody else because they have it better than you, it'll keep you stuck in the same spot. Like when you're grateful and when you can see that person working is an inspiration, then that's when you become more open to receiving. And at the same time, by doing and becoming more, because you can have more than you've got by becoming more than you are. Like that's nature, that's law. Like, because if you stay as you are, you always have what you've got. And so people that often say that person's well off, or they had it easy, or things like that.
Things come easy to them, whatever.
All that, It might look like that. It might look like that. And because we judge, because we don't think, we judge, right? That's often what is claimed. But what they miss also, as Brenden said, as you said, is the work behind the scenes. And so by doing more, they became more, and then their children obviously got to reap in abundance what they did, which was their whole goal in the first place. Like, that's what any parent's goal and any parent's prime responsibility, they feel, is to get their children in a position where they didn't have to do all the work that they did to get there. But at the same time, what would be more valuable for the children as well is to help them build the skills necessary to then maintain what they have.
But there's positives and negatives to growing up both, right? Whether you're very affluent or you're, extreme poverty, right? There's positives and negatives to both, right? Like, how many athletes do we see come out of housing commission now in the NRL?
Yeah.
Favelas in, European League football and everything else, right? Like, we're seeing it all the time. It's because it comes out of a desperation and honestly, they've got nothing else to spend their time to. They don't want to go into crime. They don't want to go into these, degenerate behaviours or anything like that. They want to excel. They want to get good at something, and they really find their home in sport. And I feel like that's what's missing nowadays, right? And I feel like that's the main difference is, like you're saying, like, people aren't harbouring skills, right? These kids that are growing up in these households, they're having to go and harbour those skills themselves and gain those skills themselves, whereas people that are growing up affluent and rich, they just know that the money's there. Do you know what I mean? They don't have to do shit. They might not even work or do anything until uni.
It's more of an expectation that it's just going to be there. Yeah. And so I think as well, like, because for me, money was never an issue in my household as well. Like, there would have been maybe a period of time when I was younger where, like, my dad was just constantly working so that then he could get everyone the holidays that we could have and the time that we spent with our parents and all different things. And so, but at the same time, like, the money was there. So now, me as an adult, my siblings as adults, like, because we know that the money's there, like, we turned out differently than if we would have not had the money at all. And so, I've come to understand that. And what I've also come to realise is that, there are times where I do feel complacent because I'm just like, I still live at home, and so and it's comfortable, and so. But at the same time, I also then just go, all right, well then, I need to build the skills so that then I can make my moves and then do what my dad did for my kids, and then help my kids with the skills they need so that then they can do that for their kids, my grandkids, and build that on. And
like when you said, like, you put a bit of an emphasis on living at home, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that, right?
I don't think so either.
And in every other country besides the United States, England, and us, like, besides the Western world, right? I feel like a lot of families are living together. Like, I'm sure you'd say this as Maltese background, how many Maltese families live together, right? Or very closely, like, you might buy a house here and a house next door to each other, or the grandparents live in the granny flat, and the mum and dad, and the grandkids live in the main house, right? And I feel like a lot of that is kind of forced, not forced, but it's like almost like accepted and like, how do I explain it? It's just society putting pressure on people to get out and have their own house and pay more taxes and all this sort of stuff. Whereas, like, European households, right, you have 20 people living on one property, 15 people living on one property, and it's like they're not all in one house. It might be one massive house, but they're on different ends of the house. And I feel like that's a better way to live, to be honest. It's, better for the family unit. It's better for the men, better for the women, better for the grandparents.
It's funny you should say that too, because I was just actually watching, I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was a video saying that living out of home is a style. Like, because the thing 100%. Is, like, you're disconnected from your family, you got to pay more rent, you got to pay more taxes, you go to work to then pay that rent and pay those taxes when, as a collective at home, like, you could all have that all at once, and you have all your collective incomes to then contribute to the family nest. And so,
and that's the way of looking at it, not as, you're leeching off your mum, you're leeching off your dad and this and that. You know what I mean? Like, it's no mother or father wants their kids to leave the house. You know what I mean? Like, they might, right? But they're not going to be happy that you're gone. They're going to miss you for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like, we'd all be way better off if we all had a block of land, a granny flat, parents or grandparents live in the granny flat, mum and dad and the young grandkids live in the house. And then that way there's no childcare issues. You just go, look, we'll give them to the grandparents. They can, look after them while we're at work. Mum probably doesn't, mum has the option to work then rather than staying home or just daycare. Like, it's, I prefer the way that the European countries do it.
And I think as well, like, a lot of that, like, is all, like, well said and done in the theoretical aspect, but also at the same time, like, there are some pretty twisted people out there. So you just go, well, how do you set yourself up so that then, like, you can succeed on your own terms, but not at the expense of everybody else, but to everybody else's benefit? Because the thing is, like, that all works, but at the same time, if not everyone is contributing, like, not everyone has to contribute, like, and there's different ways to contribute, but
of course,
at the same time, if it's just all one person doing everything, then that just makes things more difficult, because then that one person then feels like they're catering for everybody else, and then everyone else expects that one person to do the things that they're doing anyway, and so that can feel like a burden. And that's definitely something that a lot of people can relate to as well. And so having those boundaries set and having those terms set where you make those agreements and then you stick to those agreements, where if you are in a place where it's a big house and everyone's all there and you're going, hey, look, here's what's going on, here's what I would like to happen, and then everyone has their piece and everyone has their say, and then they all contribute to the collective thing, that's where it works harmoniously. But if there's no communication, there's no boundaries, there's no nothing, then that's just all going to fall apart.
Communication's key for anything, right? I feel like that's, I think social media's really fucked that up for a lot of people. Like, people don't know how to communicate. People can't hold eye contact. People don't shake hands. People just are useless, to be honest, nowadays. Like, they are, really. Like, they might have maybe more IQ. I don't know. You can even argue that, to be honest with you. Like, most people can't understand, like, basic words in English language. And they're, putting shit on, other people that English is their second language. And it's like, how ignorant are you? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah, ignorance is not bliss.
No.
It's not. And then the thing is, too, sometimes with whatever it is that we're going through, we just use ignorance as a way to cope, because sometimes it might be so overwhelming, and because we don't know how to communicate or express emotions, then we just use withdrawal as a way to go, well, you know what, I don't want to be a burden on anybody else, and I don't want to put anyone else into jeopardy with the things that are going on in my life, so I'm just going to leave them out of it. And that can be problematic.
Yeah, 100%. And it's people using, like, something that's happened to them as an excuse to justify them being a shit person, or, like having shit behaviour. And my mate asked me this the other day, right? And I want you guys to answer this as honestly as you can, just, yes or no, right? Have you ever used, I had a shit day at work today as an excuse for anything?
In the past, yeah, I have.
Oh, without question.
Yeah.
Without
I
question.
can honestly say I've never used that excuse. I've never said, I had a shit day at work today, as an excuse for something that I've done, ever. Yeah. I've heard it a million times used, 100%, right?
Yeah.
Men, women, everyone's used as an excuse, right? But, so what kind of changed in you to never use that as an excuse again? And when we're using it, do you think?
It would have been years ago. I honestly can't remember the last time we used it, but there would have been time when I was first at work. I could have used it as an excuse to not go to the gym, for example.
Yeah.
That would be about it. If there's something to be done, generally I'll get it done and go on my way to get it done. So it's just the whole mentality and getting discipline into me and developing discipline, and that's basically where it's sort of evolved for me. But
that's. I think for me, it's been more fundamentally mental, more so than physical. So because there are times where I'll just still go, well, I either didn't sleep or I'm not feeling too good, so I'm going to go to the gym. Yeah. So, but at the same time, like, because I overloaded myself with the gym when I was in my 20s, like my early 20s, then I'm still feeling the repercussions of that. And so, like, and again, that's not to justify me not training now. It's a decision. And so, like I said, I still do it right now, but more so it's been, this is my responsibility, and not putting the blame on my parents, or not putting the blame on the government, or not putting the blame on anything else, whatever it is. And so that fundamental change, like, it came when, like, I was listening to a motivational tape years ago, and it said for things to change for you, you've got to change, right? And so, like, I just admitted responsibility for everything. Like, the weather shit, my fault. We're not having a good time, or this is not a good conversation, my fault. I know that I've done something here to be a part of this dynamic because I'm here. And so I can't just abdicate any responsibility.
Yeah, you're not a fly on the wall.
No, and that's exactly right. And so...
we're not like the colour of the wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
and it's so, like, it might not be my fault, but it's my responsibility. And so that has been the foreshadowing, like, that's the preemptive thing in my mind all the time when things aren't going so well in my life. Yeah, okay, it's me. Like, there are things that I know that I need to address that I'm not addressing that need addressing. And so... who do I need to talk to for help? Who do I need to see so that then I can make better decisions? What books do I need to read? Like, what things do I need to do at work differently? And it all starts with changes within the self. But I feel as though as well, like, coming from me, I can understand why other people would have difficulty doing it because it's one of those things where you go, well, you just say to yourself, well, this is how I was raised, or this is the way that
it's an excuse
I grew up, or like,
this happens to me.
This is the way I've always done things. Like, that's the worst thing you can say. Like, this is the way I've always done it. Has it been working? Well, no. Would you consider doing anything else? Well, that's a little hard because I've been always doing it this way. And it's like, well, I mean, choose your heart, man.
Just because it's the way you've always been doing doesn't mean it's the right way to do things.
It's like paint, spray painters. There's got a problem to where I work. They say, I've been doing this for 20 years. Doesn't mean you're doing it the right way for 20 years.
Like, useless experience is exactly that. It's useless. Like you've been doing something wrong for 20 years. Well, I hate to say it, you're about as useful as a first year apprentice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, fuck, they might even be more useful because they might have been taught the right way for a few weeks.
And so, and the thing is too, like, that's one of those things about embodying excellence as well, is like, you don't get to not make a decision. Like, making a decision is always part of the deal. Yeah. It's just, which decision are you willing to make? Like,
everything is your choice and your fault.
Absolutely,
I think that's what people need to take away from this or anything, really.
But at the same time, you don't get to choose either the consequences. Consequences are a byproduct of your choices.
Exactly.
So you've got to choose your consequences, whether they're going to be the consequences of years of excuses or the consequences, which often are positive, the years of discipline. And so it's one of those things where it does just boil down to choices and priorities.
I agree with that, 100%.
Alright, so to finalise this, what would be your personal definition of embodying excellence?
Well, exactly like you were saying, like, I think, this is... It's a good question, honestly, it is. I think excellence is a choice, like you were saying. And I think you can either, choose to excel in something, or you can choose not to. And it's whether or not it's important to you or not. And I think that's the main thing. And it's like, do you have those traits or not? If you don't have those traits, you need to work damn hard to get them, do you know what I mean? Or to, possess those traits. Some people just... if you've had things coming to you easily and naturally, right? Like, you're going to be less inclined to develop skills to gain those things. Do you know what I mean? So, I think, embodying excellence to me is a choice. It's a choice you make every day, day to day, the actions you make, like the actions and decisions you make every hour, every minute, whether it's choosing to skip a meal or choosing to get to work 5 minutes early, choosing to do your hair, choosing to groom your beard, whatever it is, right? All those things are going to add up, and they're all like part of embodying excellence. And I think doing these things because you enjoy them is going to make it a lot easier to excel in them, as opposed to doing something that's a chore or something that you're not enjoying.
I agree. Thanks for coming on, Reece. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
Thank you.